You can't stop that. Put yourself in. There is no escape, even if you want to. She said, but the best thing that you can do is don't let them take the time from you. Use the time. Learn everything you can while you in there. You don't need no degree, but get your PhD. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, that makes so much sense. So this, if I apply this to my prison term, if I get time out of this, and I apply what she's saying, when I get out of prison, I can have the knowledge of a professor at a university in the amount of time that I'm about to get, that I don't know I'm about to get this much time. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in the end, they gave me 18 to 50 years in prison. Right? And during my Cook County stint, well, I was like a year and a half, I end up coming across, I just started realizing that all of the um, most potent members of our community, the organic indigenous people, was in these cages, right? And I got introduced by different ones, by different people. Like this the leader of the Maniac Disciples, name is Ferg. I met my cousin introduced me to him on our way to court, right? Then in the bullpen, it was some BGs, black, what they call black gangsters, that was high ranking, and he introduced me to them, right? I had a vice lord introduce me to Willie Lord, and it was kind of odd to me when he done that, because um, we walking through the day room, he calling me over there where his chief at, to introduce me to his chief. But he told me beforehand, he said, man, I want to introduce you to Willie Lord. Right? And I was like, okay. And because we was watching him on the news get arrested. And when he got in there, he was downstairs in a cell block called ABO in Division 1. So he came up on the visit. They brought him up to A1 where I was at. And so Lil J, who was a 4-star elite vice lord, he said, come here, man, I want you to meet somebody. And he walked over, he said, stay right here. So I'm standing on the other side of the day room, and he went and said a couple words to Willie Lord, then he waved me over there. He said, hey, Lord, I want you to meet him, man. And he told me who I was, his name Rod. And back then, I was studying with a Nation of Islam guy named Everett X, who was teaching me about, now this is all within the first year of being locked up, but he was teaching me Nation of Islam doctrine, and they was calling me Rod X, right? But they was calling me that like a nickname because I hang out with the Nation of Islam guy all the time, but they all knew that I was under the GD banner. And so when he introduced me to Willie Lord, the whole day room stopped talking and they looking. And what he said caught my attention. He said, hey, Lord, this one right here, this is the one. I don't know what that shit means. Right? And he shook my hand and he says, it's good to meet you, young brother. He said, stay on the straight and narrow. That's all he said. He didn't give me no conversation. We didn't go into nothing. We just greeted each other, but he told me to stay on the straight and narrow. I know what that means from church, and I know what that means from Everett. And we discussed it. Right? Staying on the straight and narrow means walk straight. Right? Don't let these people push you off your path.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when Everett X had to leave, he went upstate. And the last thing I told him, I was like, man, this is a big deal. I don't know if I could do it. He looked at me and I could see the Elijah Muhammad in his face when he started smiling. He said, oh, you got this. And then he recited the story of Hiram Abiff. And he said, you're going to need that later. And then I heard Farrakhan go over the story of Hiram Abiff, right? And when I started studying the story, after I got out of prison, I started seeing certain events unfolding that was unnerving to me, because this was starting to tell me there's a Masonic connection to my birthright. So now I have to study the lodges deeper than I already have, because I was going through a secret society investigation while I was studying with the Nuwabians in prison. So we was going through, well, I was going through each secret society, reading entire text on them, where Malachi had a book out called Secret Societies Unmasked, where he got a little part about all of them. So I started to get books from their perspective about their doctrine, right? But it became more enhanced when I came home, right? And so during the course of these years, normally my temperament, I would have been, what they call ready to ride. I was always ready to ride, but it had to be one condition. I got to be right. The only reason why I feel like that is because my mama used to tell me when I was little that don't start nothing and you're going to always win it. You got to always be in the right. So I don't start nothing, but I sure finish it. I don't got no problem finishing it. And I remember my father saying that a man always moves straight. He said, man, don't do all that funny, swervy, shifty stuff. That's not how he was talking to his friends in our garage. So this was one of my lessons on being a man from my father that really impacted my life, because I always came at people straight. And mama said, respect those who respect you. But you got to give respect to get respect. That means if I'm at your house, in order for me to get respect at your house, I got to first give you respect. I got to come in peace in order to receive peace and the blessing up on arrival. So everywhere I went, I held that in the forefront of my mind. And everybody that I met them from a level of respect, and it was returned. And this is why, as a GD, I'm over in Motown on 50th in May, living in the complex in an all-stone neighborhood. The only folks is on 50th place, right? So I gave them their respect because that's their land. I already know to honor them on their land and give them their due respect. And they drew an attachment to me from being respectable and being respectful of their place. So I ran into a couple of confrontations with some of the Stones, but it was always resolved in a manner of respect. So I didn't ever have a problem with Stones and Vice Lords being Stones and Vice Lords. I didn't never see them as enemies because I knew we had the same enemies. So I didn't know how to categorize what I'm looking at, but I know that whoever it is that's infiltrating Stones and Vice Lords is the same people infiltrating the GDs. I understand the literature of the GDs. And I understand the literature that I was given by Vice Lords. And I understand the literature that I was given orally by Stones and Crips and Bloods. And I'm seeing a pattern that this is the behavior that's ancient on the land. If this behavior is ancient on the land, I got to see it somewhere else. Here, lo and behold, it emerges. It's the structure of the Nation of Islam. It's the structure of the 5% nation. It's the structure of Yahweh ben Yahweh's Hebrew Israelites. It's a repeating pattern. It's a tribal structure from the top to the bottom. How we used to perform in the old ways where we was in all parts of the land, but we never had conflicts with people on their portion of the land. Because we understood that who we are is predicated up on honoring those and respect when you in their house. You can't come in somebody's house and just superimpose your will. So whoever the imposter is the ones who came in our house and is doing what we don't normally do.
Makes sense.
So when I start tracing it back, I end up with the 32-degree Scottish Rite, Morals and Dogma, George Washington, Albert Pike, the guy that started the Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt.
Mm.
3 different personas of the same person. But most people can't see the pattern. I couldn't see the pattern originally until I was studying forensic profiling and the mechanics of it. And I wanted to do a forensic profile on the biblical God character, which turned out horrible, by the way. Turned out horrible. Turns out that he's a sociopathic narcissist, early bedwetter, who has mama issues and daddy issues and don't know his own identity and sexuality, who feels that he should be held in superiority to other people just because who he is, where other people become less than him. This biblical God character can't be no God. He got to be some kind of mortal masquerading as a God through written literature. Because that's not the characteristics of the God form. So that came from a Q&A that I had in Saginaw Correctional Facility with some University of Michigan psychologists who came to do a lecture at the prison. And during the course of the lecture, I had asked them, had anybody done a psychological evaluation of the biblical God character, because I couldn't find it. And they assured me that as far as they knew, one of them had like 35 years in psychiatry and psychology. One was a psychologist for over 45 years. The other one was a psychiatrist for over 40 years. And none of them had heard of anybody having the audacity to do a psychological profile in the since it became known on this character from the Bible.
Now, with that, let me just interject my little bit of my knowledge from what I learned versus what I was taught versus what I learned afterwards in awakening process. We see God in the Bible somewhat as schizophrenic and bipolar and can't make up his mind about his love or hatred for his creation, when in fact we're not talking about one being, we're talking about more than one. We're talking about at least 2 majors and then minor characters.
Okay, so that goes back to what that's the schizophrenic tendencies and the sociopathic personality disorder. Bobby E. Wright wrote a book called The Psychopathic Racial Personality. That's the God character summed up in under 200 pages.
But if he is making this so-called God into one being with all of these personalities, I tend to disagree. I see multiple beings,
right? Because you're looking at it for what the story it for what the story is saying in its original language.
Right.
I'm looking at the God that they given the people
in the Bible.
They saying it's the God of the Bible.
Mm-hmm. The so-called Bible. Well, I mean, they created the Bible anyway, so right. It is the God of their Bible. They created the Bible,
right? But even that, the character, right? We know that the character comes from a series of gods merged into one person. Well, we call it a condensed God formula. They take all of the gods, give them one name as one person, and you change those names in the translation, and the layman will never know.
Right.
But the biblical seminarians know they lying to the people, and in order to get they preaching certification, they just go along with the lie.
That's what we do.
Go along to get along. So if you continuously go along with the lie, you can't liberate nobody or free nobody's mind because you live in a lie.
but I'm gonna say this, Rod, just like I've said when the times when Grand Sheik has made this like sort of like blanket statement about all preachers already know, and all preachers do not know, because
I agree.
all preachers don't go to seminary. All preachers, and if they
Right.
do, like me, they may go to a college that has a specific evangelistic focus, and is not even in comparative religion. They're always putting Christianity.
Communities telling all of the tribes similarly situated, which happens to be all 500 in North America and some change, and they all have to agree to overthrow the old system, and then the old system goes away. So the question you asked me earlier about Malachi, he's in continuity of government. He has to be there because he has one of the largest tribes on the land, right? Farrakhan has to be there. They can't not be there. If the government is going to revert back to us, our leadership has to be there, which includes those political prisoners that we mentioned earlier, all have to be there. And this is all taking place in real time. It's just that the people are stuck on this narrative of the old system, trying to hold on to his last few sips of power. So now they cup is empty. I'm about to slap that motherfucker off the table because I want my sisters to get their shit back. Mama said, don't let nobody take nothing from my brothers and sisters. And they got first right to the rights to the earth. So if we gonna fix the problem, you put it everything where it properly go, it'll run the way it's supposed to run, and you don't got to micromanage everything.
Right.
You ain't got to worry about it. Just put the most qualified person to lead the position in the current conditions. I might not be qualified to lead this charge in 10 years because my qualifications might have exhausted themselves by doing certain work. But somebody else gonna come along behind me and say, this is how we take what you was doing to the next level, right? So
Right.
we taking it to the next level, and the highest level we can take it is to the grand matriarch in order to restore balance to the land. And we all know who that is
And
because I
I
done
like
told
what
you.
you said. I like what you're saying, Rob, because you're not saying that you are the end, the be all, and the end all. But for this season, you are doing the work that you've been assigned. For me, for this season,
Yeah.
I'm doing the work that I'm assigned. And just like you said about Grand Sheik, we get to a place where we need to be able to get to a place where, as we become elders, that we can relax from that, because there are a younger a crew coming in that should be preparing themselves to take a leadership role, and to let the elders be revered, and let the younger then to me do the heavy lifting. I'm hoping that somebody will come and take over. I do so much when it comes to the House of Reawakening Minds, from the standpoint of the day to day. Is me. It's the calls. It's the creating the this. It's the can do it. I mean, Grand Sheik and I basically work together, but he does what he does when he comes here and talks, and he does work if work needs to be done in the building. But when it comes to the mechanics of things, this is no huge organization, but it's a huge responsibility to a very broad spectrum of people. So it has to be done with some level of professionalism and precision. Even though we have these technical things, these are things that we gotta get beyond. But we take seriously the work. We take seriously the fact that we've been put in this position for this time to be a connector. Knowing that somebody else is going to come along and pick up the baton at some point, and they need, and it needs to be a smooth transition. That's what we need to be doing,
Yeah.
preparing those to come up and take the baton.
So when people will be asking me, how can I um, not promote myself as higher based on my knowledge? I learned from Chancellor Williams that he gonna always be a greater teacher than me because he taught me. So the greater I become, the greater that make him. I taught from Taj, right? So the greater I become in the application of civics is a testimony of the greatness of Taj. I
Absolutely.
can't never overshadow them. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants who stood on the shoulders of giants. I'm just the midget that could see the furthest. That's how I see it. So
Yeah.
all of them that did the work before me laid the foundation for my work to be able to be functional and usable. Because I'm not usable if I don't have something to use. And anything that don't have something to use and that's not usable is open to be misused. And that's why they don't like to conjure me up.
Mm. Well, I'm glad they did. I'm glad they did. We're glad they did. Many of us are. Like I said, love you or hate you. It doesn't matter. You came here to do a job and you're doing it. And whether I have folks, whether you smoke a cigarette or whatever else you smoke, whatever, or you curse or say words that are whatever they feel like it might be cuss. You're not cursing. Cuss words. Um, that's your mannerism.
And that's part of rebellion.
Okay.
Because, like I said, being politically correct and the politics are not correct is being insane. So to use the profanity, to be cussing, is to be belligerent to the improper politics being imposed on our people.
I get
So any politician that I don't hear say motherfucker, I ain't trying to hear
it.
it. He can't be politically correct and be about what's right. It's incompatible in this system.